You are listening to the Batflip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Batflip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt. We are coming to you on June 8th of 2021. This is going to be episode 39 of the podcast. This week, actually today, for some teams, starts marking the 60-game season, or 60-game mark of the season, I should say, whereas in last year, that would be the completed season. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at kind of what our predictions were preseason to what they're looking like now for all the major awards in the AL, NL, and sort of look at what the playoffs, last season's playoff format would look like today, and then say what today's format would actually look like. But before we jump into all that, let's bring in Matt. How you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. I'm actually doing this from my new house, which I'm excited about. And there's not a lot of background noise here, which is good for podcasting. And I'm really excited. And I been watching some baseball this week, a little bit of basketball, a little bit of everything. So I'm definitely excited and ready to talk about this. I think we got some interesting stuff to talk about today. So.
Yeah, we do. I've been kind of turned off of basketball now that the Lakers are out, but what's been really interesting is this College World Series between not just baseball but also softball. Like,
Yeah.
there has been some insane games, some insane stories happening over there.
Gladly Alabama got beaten both. So.
Yes, both gladly. Although Nick Saban signed an extension through 2029, so I'm not happy about that.
I'm not scared.
I'm not scared, but just not happy. Which means they're gonna keep being good.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and jump into kind of what the standings are looking like now and how that would revert to the playoff format of last year and then what it's kind of looking like this year. So right now the best team in baseball is the Tampa Bay Rays at 38-23. So they would be the number one seed, obviously. But how the playoffs would line up would be Tampa Bay, Boston, Chicago, Cleveland, Oakland, and Houston. And then the two wildcard teams would be Toronto and New York. So the AL East would have 4 playoff teams in the old format.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I think we actually had the NL Central have that last year, which was interesting because the NL Central was not very good, but it was so competitive that with no interdivision play last year, it ended up being the case. But interesting stuff there. I think Tampa was the 1 seed last year, if I'm not mistaken. So even with some of the losses they've had, some of the gains they've had, um, you know, they're still really good. And I was just looking at their stats. They have a 23-10 record away from home, which is pretty crazy. We talk about Boston, how good they've been so far. They had possibly, I think, the second worst record in the league last year. So everyone's talked about how bad they were last year, but they've been really good. The pitching's come around some. In fact, I believe they said yesterday that Chris Sale was looking like he might come back and pitch out of the bullpen some coming up, which is interesting. It sounds a little bit like what back in the day what John Smoltz did and became one of the best closers in the league after being such a good starter after a Tommy John surgery. But the AL East, look at the Blue Jays, still really good. The Yankees, I think they'll be fine. I think it's really interesting to look at this 60 game because last year, this like you said, this was the season last year, and looking at some of the teams, who's up there, who's not, the two teams that were pretty much picked as the top 2 teams in baseball coming into the season, both of them, and spoiler alert for the National League, both of them would be wild card teams right now. So I just think it's interesting to look at how small a sample size 60 games is and how, things are going to change so much before the end of the season. But very, very interesting there.
Yeah, so like you were talking about Boston, I don't think anybody really expected Boston to be this good so far. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this a little bit. Do you think that's a huge thing because of Alex Cora? Like, do you think he brought that clubhouse back? Like, he had the clubhouse there, obviously, when they went to the World Series and all that. Then the whole scandal comes out. They fire him, and then after this, they put Ron Renicky in as like a lame duck manager, pretty much. Everybody knows he's not going to be back. And then they rehire Alex Cora, and now they're good again.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think the players do like Alex Cora, and he certainly couldn't hurt. But I think that this is a team that last year just had they just had a perfect storm of bad things happen to them that kept them from being really good. I mean, you look at some of the guys they had out last year, and especially on the mound, and they've made their bullpen better too. So there's a lot of things that they've done. I mean, they have a really good lineup, and they had a good lineup last year. I mean, you look at Xander Bogaerts, you look at Devers, you look at Verdugo in the outfield, and then JD Martinez. And JD Martinez is a guy that last year he really didn't have all that great of a year. And I mean, I think that might have been a little bit of small sample size as much as anything, but I think it's just kind of a perfect storm. And then on the mound, they didn't have Eduardo Rodriguez last year, who's one of their top pitchers. Eovaldi's pitched really well this year. I mean, they've got some guys. I mean, Martin Perez was their ace last year. And this year they've got two guys that are better than Martin Perez that are up top of the rotation. It looks like they might get Sale back for to what extent we're not sure, but this is a team that they've gone from Brandon Workman closing games to having some young guys step up in their bullpen and be a lot better. Um, I mean, I think this is a team that I think they're legit. I don't know if they're going to be the team that I don't know if they're going to stay second in this division all year, but I do like this team a lot, and I like a lot of their pieces, especially on the infield. I think they've got a really good roster. So
Yeah, I wonder if it's a little bit like more on top of it, a little bit of addition by subtraction. They got rid of like Mookie Betts before last year. Now he's not an addition by subtraction, but also Jackie Bradley Jr. He was so good defensively, but he really didn't bring much to the offensive side. Andrew Benintendi they traded this year. While they haven't got much in return from that, maybe it's given them room to play other guys a little bit more. So it is weird. I mean, nobody really thought that this team would be this good, and a lot of factors have went into it. But looking at some of the core pieces that they had during that World Series run, now they're not on the team, and a year and a half later, they're right back into it.
yeah, it's definitely interesting to look at, and they're a team that I mean, you look at their lineup. I mean, they added Hunter Renfroe this year. You can't forget about that. He's got a 105 WRC plus. They added Kike Hernandez. Um, those guys have both been pretty valuable, and it helps that JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers are playing like their normal selves again, and not like they did last year. I mean, I think Xander Bogaerts was still good last year, but JD Martinez had a down year. Rafael Devers had a down year. So definitely helps to see what what those guys have accomplished so far. And I think this team is, like I say, I think they're pretty good. So
Yeah, and like you said, mentioned a little bit ago, the last team to get in right now would be the Yankees, and they would barely get in, like minimal percentage points over the Kansas City Royals. We've talked a lot about the Yankees' struggles this year, but just looking at this point, like even with the expanded playoffs, they would have been the last team to get in, and it shows like how bad it really has been so far this year.
yeah, the Yankees just have a bunch of issues right now. Injury wise, it's been tough. They've had extended absences of Luke Voigt, extended absence of Giancarlo Stanton. They've had issues on the mound with guys getting hurt. Kluber obviously was pitching real well for them, through that no hitter, and then the next start he gets pulled with a shoulder injury. Um, they've had a multitude. DJ LeMahieu, I believe, missed a little bit of time. They just had a multitude of injuries and issues, and some of their guys who you expect to not be, you expected to have a little bit of a bounce back. They've all turned out kind of, or more they're risky type players, like a Gary Sanchez or a Gleyber Torres or something that, they've been a little inconsistent. They've been good and bad. You could either get elite production or no production out of them. They've really had the worst outcome out of all those types of guys. I mean, Gleyber Torres hasn't been very good. Gary Sanchez hasn't been very good. In fact, Gary Sanchez was so bad he got benched for Kyle Higashioka. So I mean, you look at the Yankees, and that's a little bit of their issue. Is more of, I feel like, some of that type of stuff. But I mean, they still have some of these guys coming back. I mean, they're gonna get Aaron Judge is playing well. They're gonna get Giancarlo Stanton back soon, or hopefully soon. They're gonna get. I mean, they're gonna be fine. They're gonna be absolutely fine. They still got a great bullpen. Aroldis Chapman's out of his mind right now. Chad Green's been good this year. You look at their rotation. They're going to get Severino back at some point, most likely. Say what you want to about Domingo Herman. I don't like the guy because of the issues that he had, but he's pitched pretty well. Garrett Cole's Garrett Cole. I do think that team will be fine going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we had mentioned last week, especially that they're a team that look out for them to make a move, especially earlier if Brian Cashman thinks that they need to. And right now it's looking like they might need to do that just to get a little bit more life into that club. But let's jump over to the AL Central and talk about how this race and what it means for the playoff spots. The White Sox are obviously the top of this division, but Cleveland, I mean, they're not far back. And I mean, we expected Cleveland to be good, but did we expect them to be this good so far?
Um, the thing about Cleveland is that we they're almost a little bit like the Rays. I don't think they do it quite as well as the Rays, but they do such a good job developing pitching that they can trade guys away like Trevor Bauer and Mike Clevenger and guys like that. They can trade those guys away. Corey Kluber. They can trade all of them away, and then they're able to replace them with good young arms because that's what they do. They're just really good at developing pitchers, and they look at their bullpen as well. They lose Brad Hand, and now you got Karen Chack and Emmanuel Clase out there just pitching their out of their minds. So, this is a team their offense is going to be a problem, and especially in the outfield. This is a team that has for so long needed outfield help, and they just have not been able to pull it together. And it's not from an extreme lack of effort. They could have made some more moves, but I mean, they have made moves. They've gone out, got Josh Naylor. They went out, got Franmil Reyes. They've made some trades and tried to get outfielders. They've called up different guys, signed different guys. You know, their infield, they got Jose Ramirez still. Um, you know, it's just the team that their offense is going to hold them back from. I think they're kind of at their ceiling right now. It's just about a 544 winning percentage, 31 and 26. I think that would equate to something like you know, an upper 80s win total for the season, which I think is kind of their ceiling. They have elite pitching and just not enough offense to carry them past the White Sox, who have been really good.
Yeah, and we expected the White Sox to be right up there at the top of this division. We didn't expect the Twins. We've talked a bunch on this channel about the Twins' struggles so far this year. But they currently have, I think it's the second worst record in the major leagues, if I'm not, oh no, not second worst, but second worst in the AL, and that's tied with the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
So very bad for Minnesota so far. But with the way that the current playoff format is looking right now, you would have Tampa, you'd have Chicago, you'd have Oakland winning the AL West by a game, and then the two wild card teams would be, I believe, Boston and
Boston and
Houston.
Houston. Yeah.
Boston and Houston. That's who it would be.
Yeah. So if the season ended today, you would see the Yankees, Blue Jays miss the playoffs. But it's just one of those things where it, I mean, you look at the A's, and that feels like a small sample size type team right now to me. It feels like a team that's going to fade. I don't know if they've got the depth to continue all year like this. And for the Astros, um, you've got you've got some pretty good outcomes from your guys who had rough years last year during the regular season, like Altuve, Correa. Gurriel's been really good this year. Bregman's been really good this year. You're getting those guys back to playing well, and that's something that if you got all those guys back playing well, I felt like the Astros were going to be good, and they're showing it. I mean, I think they're just one game back right now, and obviously, we're talking about the 60 games, and the 8-team format we had last year, they would be in, and I believe that they'd be that second wild card team this year. They'd be playing the Red Sox, so. Um, the Astros have gotten enough pitching so far, and they're gonna get Framber Valdez back to 100% at some point. I know he's pitched a little bit, but they need him back 100%. I mean, they've got a good team right now, and I know, especially for a Dodger fan like yourself, it sucks to say it, but I really do think the Astros are good, and they're going to be the team that prevails here as the season goes forward.
No, yeah, they are. We always expected them to bounce back. Like as much as we want to joke and make all the funs about the sign, stealing scandal and all that, the Astros were still a good team before that, and the players were already very good players before that. Did that help them? Probably a little bit, but it doesn't take away from the fact that they were already good major league players beforehand. And like you said, they got Framber Valdez back. Luis Garcia, who we'll talk about in a little bit, um, has been really good for them so far as a rookie. Zach Greinke still, he still knows how to pitch. He's not the ace he once was,
He's
but
still good. I mean,
but he's
he's
still
perfectly
good.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and Lance McCullers has been decent. It's just the thing with them is that their pitching hasn't been that healthy, and you're starting to see those guys come back. I'm not sure where is Jose Urquidy back.
I'm not sure about that one.
I'm not sure if he's back yet, but if he's not, that's another guy they're getting back. And then, there's been rumors, not sure how true they are, but at some point they might be able to get Verlander back.
I don't know about that one,
That's
but
that's why there's been
yeah,
some rumors like with
I'd
Sale
be
that he's trying to
yeah.
push for a bullpen thing. Not saying he's going to be a starter and not saying that he will come back, but they might be able to get him back depending on how they recover.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to rule anything out, but he's what 38, 39
Yeah,
now. I mean, it's got to be tough for a 39-year-old to heal that fast, and for anybody to heal that fast from Tommy John. But no doubt, 39-year-old and I mean, obviously, if he can pitch, they'd probably bring him back because I don't think him or the team would be that worried about long-term shoulder or elbow
exactly.
injuries for him. I mean, if he gets another elbow injury, he's done anyways, and he's probably done in a year or two anyways, regardless of elbow issues. But, um, obviously, you don't want him
It,
to get hurt, but.
yeah, it's
Um,
definitely a long shot, but
yeah,
who
no doubt.
knows?
Yeah, I was gonna say I really would be stunned if we saw Verlander this
Yeah.
year, but we'll see. Maybe you never know. So
Yeah, point of it being is that Houston's kind of getting healthier, and that we're not sure that Oakland's going to be able
yeah,
to really keep up that or keep up
yeah,
with Houston. I think Houston's just going to get a little bit better over time.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
well, let's jump over to the NL, kind of talk what's going on there. So right now, through the old format, the playoff teams would be the Mets, the Braves, Milwaukee, the Cubs, San Francisco, San Diego, and then the wild card teams would be the Cardinals and the Dodgers.
Yeah, see, that's another one, and that's just such a. It's the short season, and goes to show how last year was such a weird season with the 60 games and the expanded playoffs. I mean, the small sample size. I don't think the Giants are going to stay this good all year. They'd be the one seed. They have the best record in baseball right now, and
Mhm.
you know that would be to me that just seems really crazy that the Giants would be the one seed in the NL because I don't think they're the best team. I think they're a very 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 possible wild card team. I really doubt that they are able to win the division because the Dodgers are there. But I look at the Cardinals too. I mean, I think that I was never that high on the Cardinals, but a lot of people picked them to win, and it's one of those things where they can show it, the rest of the year, and they wouldn't have been able to do that in that 60 game season last year. So, it's interesting stuff to look at, but so far, interesting stuff. In the NL, tight races all over the NL. The NL East, every team's within 7 games, and obviously the top three are the Mets pulled away just a tiny bit, but it's still close at the top, and then the Central you got 4 teams within 4 games, and the West you got 3 teams within 3 games. So um, very interesting, and this is going to be, I think, the side where you're really going to see the tight battles to get into the postseason or get into the or win divisions. So
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know, the looking at the 60 game mark from last season, I mean, looking at all these, it really puts into perspective of how lucky we were to have baseball last year, but how kind of lucky we are, or blessed, I should say, that we have a full season back and that we don't have to worry about this kind of format anymore. We're back to what normal baseball would be like.
yeah,
Um,
no
and
doubt.
and these races all throughout, because I mean, while this is insane, I think I can speak for everyone that says like 162 game season. These races are going to be even more intense going down. Like you said, you don't expect the Giants to be the best team in baseball or the best record, I should say. Well, Tampa still has a better record than them right
Okay,
now,
yeah,
but
it's the best record in the National League.
but yeah, I mean, even then, nobody expected that. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody expected it to be a two-horse race and the Dodgers and Padres to pull away.
yeah,
Um, and the Giants have overperformed a lot, but still to this point, I mean, it's crazy seeing the Dodgers down in third place, 3 games back, and they're technically they're tied. They'd be leading any other division
yeah,
basically in the National League.
yeah. And if you look at the NL, one other thing that I think the NL's had most of the top teams have had their injury issues. You look at the
Yeah,
Mets, you've had DeGrom out, you've had McNeil out, you've had Conforto out, you've had tons of other guys out. The list goes on and on and on. The Braves, a lot of injuries. You've had some games missed by Acuna, who he's played almost every game, but he's missed 5 or 6 games from injury. You have you've had bullpen just absolute crazy injuries in the bullpen. You've had pitching injuries, Soroka, who you're expecting to get back in April, is now looking like he might not pitch this year. There's a plethora of injuries for Atlanta. Chris Martin, their only good right-handed reliever, was out for a long time. The Phillies missed Harper for a while. The Brewers, Burns missed a couple starts. Yelich was out for a long time. Um,
Kane.
You look at the Cardinals now. Jack Flaherty's hurt. Yeah, Kane was out for the Brewers. The Cardinals, Jack Flaherty's hurt now. He's out for a couple months possibly. You look at the West, and the Padres missed Tatis for a while. They've missed Nelson Lamet for a while. Obviously, Clevenger out for the year with the you know with the injury from last year, and then the Dodgers, they missed Cody Bellinger for a long time. They missed several guys. So it seems to me like a lot of this, the Brewers lead the Central, the Giants lead the West. I mean, or the Cubs second in the Central, the Giants the West. Those two teams seem as two of the more surprising teams. Think the Cubs to me aren't that surprising, but for a lot of people they're very surprising. Those have been the teams that have stayed the most healthy. It seems like to me,
Yeah,
and that's why they're up so high and have good records.
and
You look at a lot of the other teams that have struggled, and it's not the case.
and the Giants are kind of getting bit by that now. Evan Longoria is going to be out 46 weeks with a shoulder injury that just
Yeah,
happened this past week, and he's been one of their better players this year so far. So, like you said, a lot of the injuries have happened in the top teams in the NL, and it's kind of flipped it on its head. So it's going to be interesting to see once everybody's getting healthy. Like you said, Atlanta's kind of getting healthy a little bit. The Mets they've got DeGrom back. They're still missing Conforto. I believe McNeil's still out, or is he
yeah,
back?
yeah. I think he's out.
He,
J.D. Davis missed a lot of time too.
yeah,
A
Yelich
piece for them.
just recently came back for the Brewers. Like you said, Flaherty just went on the IL with the oblique, so that'll be a while. But Tatis is back, and he's looking just as good as he was last year. Lamet is back. He's pitched a couple games. We'll see, how that continues on because you never know with that elbow since he didn't get the reconstructive surgery. The Dodgers have started getting healthy. Bellinger is back. Gonsolin's coming back tomorrow. Um, Seager's progressing, but they've had him for most of the season at least. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens when kind of the injuries stop happening as much to these teams and it kind of levels out for everyone. Who kind of rises and who kind of falls, and who was for real that team that was really good even though they might not have had the injuries, or maybe they were really good and they had injuries or something. So
Yeah, yeah. It just goes to show how the small sample size of the 60 game season, you know,
yeah,
it can be tough. But
and I don't know about you, but like last year when through the 60 games, I was like, I mean, it went quick, but at the time I was like, man, this is actually, it doesn't feel like it was that short. And then now that we know we have the 162 game season, I'm like looking here and I'm like, man, this was really short so far. Like
yeah,
we're barely
it's
into the
just getting
season.
started. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're not even a third of the way, or I guess we are a third of the way
yeah,
through now. But
yeah.
um,
It's
anyways,
insane. So, well, what we wanted to do is also kind of look at what our awards predictions were from the beginning of the year to what we kind of would be now with what we've seen so far. And obviously these aren't going to be the final awards or whatever. But it is fun to look at because of that 60 game season that we had last year. It would kind of bring a little bit of a different spin to it. Um, so we'll start over in the American League. And who did you have for your American League MVP so far?
So far, for my AL MVP, I'm going to go with Vlad Jr. He has been absolutely incredible this year so far, having his true breakout year. He's hitting on the season a 333 average, 436 on base percentage, 662 slugging. He's got 18 home runs, 47 RBIs. This is in 57 games for him. His strikeout rate is only at 14.8%, which to me is incredible for a guy of his with his swing and his power, especially in this day and age. And then you have the 14% walk rate, so he walks a lot. He's patient, but he doesn't strike out a ton. 195 WRC plus. That's Mike Trout level stuff right there. And then 3.5 wins above replacement. He's actually been, I didn't even realize this when I was looking at him earlier, but he's actually been positive on the base paths, which to me, for Vlad Jr., that's pretty impressive to me. He's got a pretty high BABIP, a 331, but that's something that is probably sustainable for him as hard as he hits the ball. This is a guy who, he was advertised to be this type of player, and I mean, he's got a shot at being the first Triple Crown winner since Miguel Cabrera as of right now. I mean, he's got a legit shot at that. So
Yeah, he really does, and that's a big improvement for Vlad. Like you said, a lot of people last year were kind of doubting, not say doubting him, but they were like, man, is he going to be as good as we thought he was going to be? And then he went on that massive diet this year. I think he lost 30 pounds or 50 pounds or something, and he's really come out. And I think his bat speed looks a lot faster. That's due to losing that weight. But I mean, Vlad Jr.'s been fun to watch so far.
yeah, no doubt. He's easily been the best player in the American League so far. I don't know if we'd be saying that if Trout was playing, who was I think both of ours pick, right? We both picked Trout, right?
I believe so. Yeah, we both
Yeah,
picked Mike Trout to win the MVP.
yeah. So I don't know if he'd be doing this if Mike Trout was playing, or if he'd be number one and everything. But Mike Trout having been injured, which he was playing really well before injury, so I don't think we can both call ourselves wrong on that pick.
Yeah.
But yeah, Guerrero to me right now looks like he's got more. He's got .7 wins above replacement more than the next best guy in the kind of qualified guys in the American League. I don't know where Buxton sits because he hasn't got enough at bats to qualify because of injury, but um, definitely good stuff from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. this year.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to kind of go a little off the board. I wouldn't say off the board, but a little bit of a weirder pick um, for my MVP, and that's going to be Shohei Ohtani. If you look at the pure batting numbers, you're going to say, what are you doing? I mean, he's only hitting 255 on the year, but he has 16 homers. He actually hit his 17th homer today. He has a 340 on base. He's got a 585 slugging, a 151 WRC plus, which is still really good, a 1.7 WAR, but that's just his batting numbers. If you look at it, he also has 42 innings pitched. He struck out 60 people. He has a 276 ERA. He's striking out a lot of people. The walks are still an issue, but he has a .9 WAR right there, so it's still a 2.6 WAR overall. And if he continues this on for a full season, and he's a guy who can, I mean, if he's already hit 17 homers now, we're not halfway through the season yet. Who knows how many he can hit? Say he hits close to 35, and then he's still a guy who, say the pitching numbers go to a 3 ERA. Say he's even a little bit worse pitching wise. If you have a guy who's hit upwards of 30 homers and he also has a 3 ERA on the year on the mound and in a good amount of innings. I mean, he's at 42 right now. Say he pitches 110 innings and a 3 RA, and he's got 30 to 35 homers. I think that's a guy who is going to be an interesting case for the MVP. He might not blow it away with just the pure batting or the pure pitching, but putting those combined, the impact that he's making on the field, even though they are missing Mike Trout, and it's going to be one of those where Mike Trout's always dealt with for a while. The Angels aren't a good team around them right now. They're where are they? They're fourth in their division. 6.5 games out of a wild card spot or out of the division lead right now. But it's an interesting case, and it's something that we have obviously never seen in our lifetime, so we don't know how the voters would take that. But I'm very surprised to see what if Shohei Ohtani can keep this up, how legitimate of a case for MVP he would have.
Yeah, that's very interesting to talk about, and he is a guy who it's going to be interesting to see what voters think of him and think of how they weigh his pitching versus hitting stats. Um, if you look at it from a pure WAR standpoint, which I think does a pretty good job for a guy like Shohei Ohtani. You look at about what you said about 2.6 and he'd be right up there in the conversation based on that. Maybe not quite at the top, based on his WAR, um, but obviously, he'd be .2 WAR behind second place, which I think he hit a home run tonight, so
Yeah.
he might be second place in WAR now. So, if you combine those, so interesting stuff. Like I said, like you said, you like to see him if he can tone down the walks on the mound a little bit. I mean, he could probably put up better numbers than he has so far on the mound too. So,
Yeah. And,
um,
and just
you
to
know,
say that homer tonight went 470 feet
yeah,
in
yeah.
Anaheim.
So, um, definitely one of those talented players in the game, and one of the most talented that's ever played the game. And uniqueness for him. That factor and just the wow factor is something that goes off hops off the page at you
Yeah, and
when
I
you look at
wonder I
him.
wonder if that wow factor would jump into the voters. I mean, we know how the entire world is pretty much enamored with Shohei Ohtani, but would that factor into the voters at all? I mean, it's
Yeah,
something we don't know.
yeah, it's interesting to think about, but we'll see. It's hard to bet against a pitcher who's leads the league in home runs. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but anyways, we'll move on now. We'll go rookie of the year next, and in the National League, or actually we got
Let's do it with the AL.
yeah. Oh, sorry, we got MVP still. We got the NL MVPs. That's my bad.
Oh, you want to do the
Uh,
MVPs? Okay.
yeah, let's hit the NL MVP here. And who's your pick for NL MVP so far?
So I'm gonna go with Fernando Tatis Jr.
Who was your pick before the season?
Oh yeah. So my pick before the season was Francisco Lindor.
Oof.
Um, yeah, Lindor has not been great this year, to say the least. Let me look up his
It
numbers so
was not.
far.
It's not good.
It's
I think
not
he's
good.
I think he's up to the Mendoza line
He's
now.
he is batting 218 on the year with a 647 OPS. But he has really turned it around. His last 2 weeks, he's hitting 311 with an
Yeah.
896, and his last week, he's hit 346 with a 985 OPS. So Francisco Lindor has turned it around overall, but the season numbers, if you look at the overall right now, have not been really good for my MVP pick, and it gets better when we get to the Cy Young pick. So just hold up on that one. But um, Fernando Tatis Jr. is the guy I picked for MVP. There's another obvious choice here, but I kind of left it for Matt, so I'll let him talk about that in a little bit. But Tatis he's been good this year. He's been he missed that time with the shoulder, but he's come back and he's looked just as good as ever. He's batting 283, 366 on base, a 660 slugging. He has a 169 WRC plus. Put that into perspective, where everybody thought he was the man last year and struggled a little bit down the stretch, which kind of cost him the MVP. He had a 149 WRC plus last year, and in his 60 games last year, or his 59 games, he had a 2.9 WAR. In 44 games so far this year, he's put up a 2.4 WAR. So he's right around there, right around it in what's that? 15 less games,
Yeah.
and it's right around the same numbers. He's hit exactly 17 homers this season, what he hit last year. His RBIs are down just a little bit. He has more steals. His walk rate has gone up. His strikeout rate has gone up a little bit as well. But I mean, he's an amazing player. The Where he might struggle is on defense. His defense has
Yep.
been really, really awful this year. So the voters might look at that and say, as good as you are with the bat, your defense has been hindering the team too much, and that's where he might lose a little bit. But I mean, who knows? This guy could even go on a more torrid pace than he already is right now. I mean, 283 at one time. Who knows? He might go on a run and hit over 300. But
Yeah. It's one of those things where you know, I think the thing that's going to hurt him the most defensively is that the problems that he's had are with errors and throwing errors specifically, but just errors in general, really, too. But when you have error issues like he's had, that's going to hurt you a lot with the old-fashioned voters. It's really the only defensive problems that can hurt you with the old school voters, and it also doesn't help with the new school voters, the sabermetric people too. So I think that's going to hurt Tatis a lot, is kind of the eye test at shortstop with errors, because I think his numbers, when you look at his range stats and his defensive runs saved, all that kind of stuff, it's they're not great, but he has such good range that they're not terrible. The problem's going to be the errors, and that's something that he can fix. I mean, he could go 6 weeks without another error, and then nobody will talk about it anymore. So some of that type of errors, it can be something that's streaky and something that changes throughout the season. So but he's been very good.
Yeah,
you know
as of right now, he's got a -4 defensive run save,
yeah,
and he's got a -4.5 UZR, which
yeah,
over 150 games would be about a -19.
yeah, which that's not good. And the UZR, that's really bad, um but it's something that, especially the -4 DRS, is something that I think, if you cut down those errors, you know you talk about long term and future wise, if he can eliminate the lapses, which are probably easy. It's easier to eliminate lapses than magically gain range or arm strength or something. If he can eliminate the lapses, then I think he'll be fine,
Yeah,
defensively. But
he's had 15 errors already this year
yeah,
in
that's
356 innings. When last year in 473 he had 3 errors.
yeah, that's a major yikes for me. But
Yeah,
we'll see what happens. It's hard to bet against him. He's a really exciting young player, and my pick here, the MVP, is another really exciting young player who it's Ronald Acuna Jr., who went on an absolute crazy tear in April and has still been good here in the month of May, and starting into June now. Um, he's up to a 288 average, 395 on base, 621 slugging with a 170 WRC plus. So really, really similar numbers to Tatis, actually. But now he's tied for the lead in the National League in home runs. He hit his 18th home run tonight. You look at his before tonight, he was up to 2.8 wins above replacement, which leads the National League. He's been good defensively in right field. Right about an above average defender in right field. The 18 home runs, I think, would have led the National League. I think that was what the National League home run title was last year in the 60 game season. And I mean, the guy's just been incredible. 11 stolen bases, so he could have another shot at definitely a 30-30 season. But I mean, there was talk about the 40-40 mark, and I don't know if he's run enough to get to the 40-40 mark, but he's definitely got a shot at that if he keeps getting on base at the almost 400 clip that he is right now. So um, big key for him this year. Strikeouts have come down about 8% from last year. So that's he's having a really good year so far.
yeah, it's a scary thought when Ronald Acuna Jr. decides to, I'm just going to stop striking out and just hit the ball very, very far. Like it's insane. He's just getting better. I mean, he's still
Yep.
so young, but it's hard to imagine that a guy that is so good can just keep getting better.
Yep.
Um, and it blows my mind. I mean, he would be a very he was an obvious pick for MVP. I wanted to leave him for you a little bit so you could talk more about him because you watch him more, but it's he's kind of at the point right now where it's kind of like Mike Trout. You can kind of start writing him in as the leading
Yeah.
candidate every single year.
Yeah, he's fairly similar to Mike Trout at the plate. He's able to, and I'm not saying he's as good yet because he's not quite Mike Trout level yet, but he's similar in the fact that he's able to hit the ball so hard and to all fields enough to where a high strikeout rate, being high, being in the low to mid 20s, doesn't affect him that much with average wise, and he walks a ton. And he hits a lot of homers, so he's able to run. I mean, he's running a pretty low BABIP. He's running a career low BABIP right now, and he's hitting 278. His batting average on balls in play that it's kind of expected with the way he hits the ball is in the 330 range. Right now, his batting average on balls in play is a 382. I mean, a 282, excuse me. So he's a roughly, and his career average is 330. So he's roughly 50 points below his career average in batting average on balls in play. So I expect he's really hit into a lot of bad luck this year, to go along with his you know his stat line he's already got. So you could even see him start to hit even better, which to me is, um, you know, he just he's unbelievable to watch. It really is it really is fun to watch him. But moving on, we don't want to spend too much time on these guys because we got other guys to talk about here too. We're gonna talk. I guess we'll do rookie of the years next.
Yeah.
And we'll talk first about the American League Rookie of the Year. Who is your pick? And I believe you had the obvious one, right?
Yeah, so I went with Luis Garcia of the Houston Astros. We kind of talked about him a little bit earlier, but he's been he's been lights out so far this year for Houston. I don't know what happened to his page. Let me pull it back up so far. So this year so far, he's got a 250 or 275 ERA in 59 innings. He's got 10.3 strikeouts per nine, 2.9 walks per nine, and his peripherals aren't as great as those numbers, but I mean what he's been doing so far this year, especially for the Houston team, like we talked about, that had struggled a lot for pitching. Uh, it's blown me away. I mean, he had pitched 12 innings in the majors before this year, and had a 2.92 ERA, but his peripherals were even worse than they. I mean, you're looking at a 4.25 FIP and a 5.22 xFIP last year, and he's brought that down to a 3.72 and a 3.93, which is very serviceable in the major leagues.
Yeah, that's he's done very well. He's really helped stabilize that rotation as we talked about earlier that has had so many injuries. But the guy I picked, I thought you were picking Adolis, and you went with Luis, so I'm gonna go with
Oh,
Adolis. But
oh, that's right. I
it,
did have the wrong part. I'm sorry.
yeah,
You did pick Luis.
yeah. But either way, I think Adolis is the one that was kind of the guy that was really everyone's talked about. 16 home runs on the season. Um, 137 WRC plus. I don't know if he's a guy that's going to keep it up at this level. He's actually played good defense too. I didn't realize that until I looked at him today. He's been a good defender, but I don't know if he's going to keep this pace up. This pace he's up at right now is insane, and I just don't think it's very sustainable. But you look at his line. I mean, he's got a 137 WRC plus, and all he's done is hit the ball really hard and hit home runs. So um, he's a guy who the Rangers. It's a season that they really didn't have anybody they expected to break out this year. And you look at Adolis Garcia as a guy that you say, hey, he actually is breaking out in a way, and he could be a very useful player for their future. So it's a very successful to find him for Texas. But very very good job for him so far this year. It's been really crazy to watch. The 16 home runs. It seems like he's hitting one just about every day. So uh, good for Adolis Garcia.
Yeah, and sorry about that. I had Garcia at both of them, and I just looked at that one and saw Luis, and I went
No,
with it
it's all
in my
it's all good
notes.
because Adolis was my true pick
Yeah.
for the rookie of the year so far. But I didn't want to pick the same guy, so I went with someone else, and then it turns out, hey, I did get to pick
on
Adolis. So
on the bright side, we both picked a Garcia.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
and I had to pick Luis Garcia as a funny
yeah,
thing, so we had a flip flop.
yeah.
So
Um, no, but what you were talking about, he doesn't get on base a lot, but he is breaking out. Like you said, 137 WRC plus. But the big thing is, you said he's played solid defense. He's made 40 of those starts in center field. So
yeah.
he's playing solid defense in center field, where most of the time you would think a guy like this would probably be made more for corner outfield. Um, so really good to see from him. I mean, he was technically my pick for rookie of the year, and I went off track there. But Adolis he's been really surprising this year. A guy, I think he was DFA'd earlier this year by St. Louis, wasn't he?
It was last
Or
year,
last
but
year?
yeah, he was DFA'd last year, and then Texas picked him up.
Yeah. So
So
it's pretty surprising right there. But let's jump over to our NL Rookie of the Year
Yeah,
picks.
who in for our
Oh yeah,
previous picks, my rookie of the year pick was Radio Rosarina for the AL before the season, and he's been good, but I think I don't think he's been quite as good so far as Adolis. But if I had to put money on it, I'd expect a Rosarina to probably be better the rest of the season. But either way, both been very good. And who was your preseason?
I picked Garrett Crochet.
Okay, and
Um,
I think he's been good, right?
yeah, he's in
Yeah,
17 innings. He has a .52 ERA and 20 strikeouts. The problem is that
yeah,
he's the reliever.
yeah.
At some point, I thought they might have him start a couple games this year, and that might help boost it. But with guys like Luis Garcia and Adolis doing what they're doing, there's not really a way that Garrett Crochet is
Yeah,
going to jump up there.
Yeah, and that goes to show you too that it's really really difficult to pick rookie of the year specifically because you don't know how long these guys are going to be up, what their roles are going to be in the big leagues, even if they might have that talent. So I'm sure a lot of people for rookie of the year would have picked Jared Kelenic. Neither one of us did, but you didn't know how long he was going to be in the minor leagues, how when he was going to make his debut, how he was going to do when he got there is always a question mark. You talk about a minor league guy, but it's hard sometimes to pick guys like that just for that reason. So
Yeah. Well, let's jump over to the NL Rookie of the Years, and before we even jump into it, let's tell our predictions since I keep forgetting that.
yeah,
Your
I wonder why
NL,
you keep forgetting that one.
no, yeah, right. The NL Rookie of the Year, you picked Ian Anderson from the Atlanta Braves, and my NL Rookie of the Year I picked was Keep Ryan Hayes of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now we're actually both deciding to pick the same person here, so I can't mix this name up. But we're going with Miami Marlins pitcher Trevor Rogers.
Yeah, Trevor Rogers has been incredible. Just a note on the two guys that we picked before the season. I kind of meant to talk about some of them, a little bit before we picked our 60 game MVPs and stuff. But um, you look at Brian Hayes as a guy who, when he's played really well. But he's spent a lot of time injured so far this year. Um, and then Ian Anderson from Atlanta has been good. He just hasn't been quite as good as Trevor Rogers. So Trevor Rogers, though, he's been incredible, man. A guy he was a top prospect, but he wasn't like a top 50 or anything. He was a top 10 prospect in a good system. And anytime you have something like that, especially a lefty that throws hard, they can figure it out. And he's figured it out so far this year. He's getting a lot of strikeouts, 10 strikeouts per nine, 3 walks per nine, which is a good number for a rookie. 68 innings pitched. He has a 197 ERA, and while the peripherals aren't quite that crazy, they do back it up. A 249 FIP and a 344 xFIP that shows him being a little bit lucky on fly balls, um, but either way, I mean, this is a guy who has been really, really, really special so far this year, and just adds to the young talent that they have on the mound there in Miami. I mean, Pablo Lopez has been good. Sandy Alcantara has been good. They still got Sixto, who is banged up, but he'll come back at some point. I don't think too many people doubt his talent. Um, and you add a Trevor Rogers, who you didn't expect to be like this, to that list, and then you've still got guys down in the minors that are top prospects. You just need to find a little bit of offense. You could have a pretty special team there in Miami. So Trevor Rogers, by far to me, has been Rookie of the Year in the National League.
Yeah, and the Miami Marlins could have had a battle for Rookie of the Year with the way Jazz Chisholm has played.
Yes,
Had he
yes.
not missed time with his hamstring injury and that, but Jazz Chisholm's have been really good as well. But just kind of backing up your point with Rogers, he's pitched 68 innings or 68 and 2/3 innings this year. He has 81 strikeouts to 24 walks, and he's given up 3 homers. 15 earned runs on 51 hits, and that's a total of 273 batters faced. Like,
Man,
diving into those numbers, it's just insane, especially from a guy like we'll say it. We didn't even expect anything to hear about Trevor Rogers so far this year, and then he's out here putting up a 197 ERA and 81 strikeouts and almost 70 innings. It's just absolutely insane.
Yeah, he is special. And I don't know if he'll keep it up. I don't know if he'll be able to do it over a full season. I don't know if there's a lot of different variables there with a rookie, but I mean, so far the guy's been incredible. But we can move on now to the Cy Young Award, which bouncing off of Trevor Rogers, he would certainly be a candidate right now. Although I don't think he's would be the top choice to too many people. But who was your Cy Young in the American League so far?
So my Cy Young in the American League so far. Actually, let me say who our predictions were.
Yes,
So
yes,
your prediction was Shane Bieber, and my
yes.
prediction was Lucas Giolito. Both have been, pretty good this year so far. Giolito struggled at times, but not quite up to the level of what we thought he was, or what I thought he was going to be. But my AL Cy Young pick so far is Tyler Glasnow. He's pitched to a 269 ERA, a 305 FIP, and a 285 xFIP. So his peripherals pretty much back up what he's doing so far. He's got a 12.39 Ks per nine. And if you're looking at his 2.92 walks per nine, you'd still like to see that number come down a little bit. But if you look at his career number is a 3.93. So he's
Yeah.
lowered it over a walk per nine, based on his career numbers. Um, he has, let me look at it, where did it go? I'm trying to find the exact number of what he had. Where'd that page go? Um, can't find it right now, but he's been really good. I mean, he even had another start today that he struck out 11 more batters. Um,
Yeah.
it's just he's always been a guy that we knew had the talent. He just always struggled with command and walking people. And if he could lower that like we've seen so far, and he's leading the Tampa Bay Rays, he's the ace for them now that they traded Blake Snell, who we'll talk about in a minute, which I don't really want to. But Glass now is he's being the ace of that team, and it's kind of he's backed it up.
Yeah, no doubt. Glasnow's been incredible, and like you said, that cutting those walks is really his big deal. You look at a 292 walks per nine. I mean, anything under four for somebody like his with his rates on the strikeouts and stuff is acceptable. But if you're under three, that's a pretty solid number. And obviously, if you can lower it just a little bit more, he could be even better. But he's a good he's been a really good pitcher so far. Um, I look at the in the AL, and I mean I went ahead and went with Garrett Cole. He's been incredible so far. 12 strikeouts per nine, 1.3 walks per nine. Those are both fantastic numbers. He's got a 2.26 ERA and 75 innings pitched on the season. 190 FIP, so he's really even been a little bit behind his peripherals. A 234 xFIP. His ground ball rate's a little bit better than it has been, which has been helping him a lot get the ball on the ground, especially in Yankee Stadium, where Garrett Cole's real weakness in his career has been the home run ball, and Yankee Stadium, typically for a pitcher would not help with that home run ball, but you look at what he's done, and getting that ball on the ground a little bit more is going to help with that issue. But he's a good pitcher, and he's been good for a long time. There's a reason he's the $300 million pitcher. So, but I kind of had to go with him, pick the obvious. I think my pick was Shane Bieber before the season, and he's also been really good. 3.08 ERA, but 2.88 FIP. So his walks are up a little bit, which a little bit worrisome because he's a guy who's such a control command pitcher. He doesn't typically walk too many guys, but he's still striking out over 13 per nine, so
Yeah.
hard to argue with that. And his peripherals are outperforming his ERA, which is already still pretty good. So good stuff from Shane Bieber too. But I had to go Garrett Cole here. But looking at the NL, who do you got?
So my prediction was Blake Snell to start the
Oof.
season. Yours was Jacob DeGrom. And my pick right now would be Jacob DeGrom. Um, DeGrom has just been absolutely insane. We've talked about him before. Coming out, he seemed to throw harder, and is able to keep it up. So far this year, he has a .62 ERA with a 102 FIP and a 152 xFIP for in 58 innings a 3.2 WAR. and
Jeez.
he has in 58 innings, he has 93 strikeouts in 58 innings.
It's incredible.
Yeah, that it's just absolutely insane. He's given up 25 hits in 58 innings and 4 earned runs. Like what Jacob DeGrom is doing right now is absolutely insane. He's striking out 14.4 batters per nine, and he's walking a 1.24 walks per nine, and he's
I mean,
allowing a 218 on batting average and balls in play.
that guy's he's incredible. His velocity's up this year. It somehow, and there's not too many words to describe what Jacob Degrom is.
No,
Uh, 58 innings and having 3.2 WAR. That just goes to show you a 102 FIP. His .62 ERA is a little bit lucky, but it's not very lucky.
here, here,
So,
here's
um,
another stat that would blow your mind. He has in his 58 innings a 45.4% strikeout rate. He's almost striking out half the batters he's facing,
yeah,
and he's walking under 4%.
yeah, that's like a peak Hall of Fame reliever level stuff.
Yeah,
It really is.
yeah,
But he's doing it for 6, 7, 8 innings a start.
it's insane. Now to jump over to who I did pick, Blake Snell. His ERA is a 4.83. His peripherals aren't that bad. His FIP is a 3.94. His xFIP is a 3.40. He's striking out 13.3 per nine. His issue has been walks. He's walking 5.3 batters per nine.
Phew.
Um, he's given up a 308 batting average on balls in play. He's given up 45 hits with 30 runs, 29 earned runs and 32 walks to his 80 strikeouts. It's just really been about his command and not being able to pitch deep into ball games, and then that's getting him into trouble when he's getting traffic on the bases, when he's handing out free passes, and he's given up you know his when he's given up a 308 batting average on balls in play. His career mark is a little bit under that, but I thought he would, once getting that big trade to San Diego after he had got pulled early from the World Series, he'd want to put that chip on his shoulder a little bit and come out and have a really good year. And over his last couple starts, he's pitched really good. He had a 7 inning shutout, or 7 innings, 0 runs, and I think double-digit strikeouts the other day. But he wasn't up to what we thought Blake Snell was going to be coming over from that trade.
Yeah, that I would agree with that assessment. Blake Snell's a guy who's a good pitcher, but you know, for one thing, there's a reason. Don't trade with the Rays. That's usually doesn't turn out very well for you, even if it looks lopsided when it happens. Just ask the Cardinals with the Randy Rosarena trade, and Blake Snell for the Padres, who he could end up still being really good, but um, if you're, and the walks kill him, and he's a guy who in the past his downfall has been command, and really in the past it's been more of efficiency than anything else when it comes to his command. He hasn't had the super. He's had high walks, but not like this. Um, but it's one of those things where you know his efficiency was bad, and that's why he didn't have that many games where he pitched a lot of innings last year, and he was
Right.
complaining about it. Now he's in San Diego, and he's not pitching many innings 'cause he's walking guys and
So
you know
to kind of
having a
put
gazillion pitches.
put
So
that in a little bit more perspective, last year in 50 innings he walked 18 batters. In 54 innings so far this year, he's walked 32.
yeah, so definitely something to look at, and not a good trend for him, but we'll see. Maybe he can straighten it out a little bit second half of the season. But the guy I picked for Cy Young was Brandon Woodruff. Before the season, I picked Jacob DeGrom. If I had to be completely honest, I probably would still pick Jacob DeGrom. But we're doing awards for at the 60 game point, not necessarily awards for who we think's going to win it. I think Jacob DeGrom's going to win it. But Jacob DeGrom's also missed a couple starts, so I figured I'd go with a guy who hasn't missed any starts. And Brandon Woodruff has been really good. Over almost 11 strikeouts per nine, just 2 walks per nine. Um, he's been He's been so good. He's got a 142 ERA, which I believe is second to third to Jacob DeGrom, and Kevin Gossman actually is the second ERA. Who's another guy we could talk about in this conversation this year. 220 FIP, 268 xFIP. He's a guy who gets the ball on the ground pretty well, 46% clip. Um, Combined with that with the strikeouts and the lack of walks, and you've got a really good pitcher. And if it wasn't for him, and I can't forget the contribution that Corbin Burns has made for Milwaukee as well, who he's got a 197 ERA, but his peripherals actually line up pretty closely to Jacob DeGrom so far this year. Um, but he's also missed a couple starts in 59 innings. I went with a guy with 76 innings pitched so far, and very interesting stuff. Brandon Woodruff, you know, just keep doing what you're doing. It's just 3 years in a row that he's done this, and nobody talks about him. It seems like he's overshadowed all the time by somebody, whether it's his teammate Corbin Burns having that ridiculous streak to start the season with the 59 walks or whatever, or no strike and no 59 strikeouts, no walks, whatever it was, or Jacob DeGrom putting up some crazy numbers or something. It seems like Brandon Woodruff never gets talked about enough as being a true ace, and that's what he is, a true ace. So.
Yeah, Woodruff is he's really really good. I've known that for a couple years, especially that playoff series against the Dodgers that really opened my eyes to what Brandon Woodruff was. I believe it was 2018 was the year that was.
Was that when he
Um,
hit the home run off
yeah,
Kershaw?
that's when
Okay.
I was getting ready. Actually, I was watching the game in the airport, getting ready to fly back to New York, and he hit that homer, and I turned it off at that point. And you know, I watched the game back later on once I got to where I was going, and he was just dominating. And I was like, who is this guy? And that kind of put him on my radar. And ever since then, I've kind of watched him a little bit more and more,
Yep.
and he's just got better since that point. And
Yep.
adding Corbin Burns to that makes that top of the rotation very nasty. And then in Milwaukee, but Woodruff is, like you said, his peripherals aren't quite what his ERA is, but I mean
Still really good.
they're still really really good
Yeah.
too. So it'll be interesting to see if they can over a full season. If some of these guys do miss starts, and he's always been a guy who's been really durable in taking the ball. What could happen?
Yep. No doubt. So we'll see what happens with these guys. Obviously, like we said, this is one of those things where I thought this was really interesting to do because 60 games season last year. I thought it was a good time to kind of revisit what we talked about before the season, and just kind of goes to show you what when it comes to these awards and these player performances and team performances too, how the shortened season last year, how small a sample size that really was. Because I bet at the end of the season, in some of these races, I don't know about in the Cy Young race, we're talking about Cole and Degrom, and I think those guys are going to be up there all year. But some of these guys, like especially rookie of the year, maybe the MVP, maybe Acuna goes cold for a couple weeks, or Guerrero goes cold or something. You start talking about some of this stuff, and it ends up changing, and you can see completely different types of players up there before the end of the season. You could have a guy that just goes ballistic in the second half and gives themselves a chance at it. So um, very interesting stuff. But real quick before we finish this episode up, we're already running kind of long. Let's talk about our players of the week, and who did you have for your position player?
So my hitter of the week I picked was Cedric Mullins. He batted 600 this week with 667 on base, a 1200 slugging for a 394 WRC plus. He had 3 homers, 4 RBIs, and 7 runs. Pretty much the lone bright spot for what the Baltimore Orioles have had so far this year. Mancini's looked really good as well. John Means, he just went on the IL. But Cedric Mullins is a guy who he hadn't got much run, and now that he's doing it, he's playing really well. He's obviously not this style of a hitter, but Cedric Mullins is a nice bright spot for Baltimore, and hopefully a guy that we can, for our buddy Hank that likes the Orioles, can keep giving him that bright spot.
Yeah, no doubt. I echo everything you said. He's been really good this year. My hitter of the week, I'm gonna go with Jonathan India. I remember watching him in college at Florida, and he was really good. And I thought this guy might have a chance to get to the majors, and he certainly has this year, broken in with the Reds, and this week hit 500 with a 619 on base, 1,000 slugging, just 2 home runs, but 19% walk rate. So 1 out of every 5 at bats or plate appearances has been a walk, and hadn't struck out much, only 5%. I like Jonathan India. I think he's got a good future ahead of him as a solid everyday player in the big leagues, and he's playing well this year. So good stuff for the Cincinnati Reds. But you want to talk about first your pitcher of the week?
Yeah, so this is I've already talked about my pitcher of the week. Ironically, I picked Luis Garcia. So this is where the whole Luis Garcia thing came in. Why I had his page up earlier, but 13 innings pitched over this week, 8 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 14 strikeouts. I believe that is for a .64 for the week. So I already talked a lot about Luis Garcia, but a really good week for the starter for the Houston Astros.
Yeah, he's very good. But I typically when I do my pitchers of the week, I typically like to look at guys who had 2 starts, a little bit more of sample size. It's easy to have one, or everyone has one good start every now and then, but having 2 is tough. But I just couldn't this week. I couldn't shy away from what Corbin Burns did in his 1 start. Of course, we know it's not just small sample size with him. He's always good, but 7 innings, 13 strikeouts, no walks, 4 hits, no runs. Sound familiar? It's basically every outing he's had this year.
Yeah.
um, just insane. This guy is, like I said, I mean, you look at his peripherals and stuff, he's right there with Jacob DeGrom. He actually has a better FIP than Jacob DeGrom. So his xFIP's not quite as good, but uh, he hits the ball on the ground. I just don't understand how this guy, I mean, 96, 97, 98 mile an hour cutters with tons of movement, and also a big sinker, good slider. He's got the command now, and 1 walk per 9 on the season. But the 7 this week, it's just another Corbin Burns outing, and I figured to highlight him once again. It seems like we're doing just about every week right now, but I couldn't resist. So
Seems like we're always highlighting Corbin Burns and
no doubt.
Jacob DeGrom, and but they're making us do it. That's the thing is
we're highlighting them for a reason. It's because they're good.
The same names. But anyways, this was a little bit of a longer episode, but I think it was a good one. We good. It was very interesting to dive into what it would look like, based on last year's 60-game season to what we've seen so far this year, and kind of compare the two, and then look at what our predictions were and how bad and awful mine really were for the full season to what's happened so far. But it was I can admit when I was wrong. God, I was wrong big time on those ones. So I don't know. Let's see what a 162. Francisco Lindor could still win MVP. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's the beauty of the 162 game season. We've been talking about, like, he's a perfect example of a guy who's had a bad 2 months to his standards, but his at least his plate discipline numbers are pretty good. So if he can if he can start hitting the ball and finding holes and maybe hitting it a little bit harder, get it up in the air a little bit more, different stuff like that, then he might end up being he might end up winning the MVP. You never know. He could just go on a tear for a month or 2, and all of a sudden he's sitting there at the 300 average. I mean, you just never know. So.
Right back in the conversation. That's the beauty. Like you said, we're only 60 games in. You got 102 to go. So.
Yep.
But anyways, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.